Hi, I'm Paul, and welcome to the All About Neurofeedback podcast. It's where we showcase top neurofeedback practitioners, so put on your headphones, tune in your brainwaves, and get ready to learn all about neurofeedback. Welcome to the All About Neurofeedback podcast, where we make brain training simple, clear, and accessible. Whether you're just curious, maybe searching for support, or maybe even a practitioner that's really passionate about helping others, you're going to find real conversations, helpful insights, and stories that show the power of neurofeedback in everyday life. And if you're exploring neurofeedback, All About Neurofeedback, it's a great place to start. And you're going to find those helpful articles, clear answers, and a growing directory of providers to help you make confident decisions. Now, lastly, if you're a practitioner listening, we didn't forget about you. We have been helping neurofeedback providers since 2017. And over at aanfb.com, you can even watch a free video called Booked and Balanced to see how we help clinics fill their calendars without the overwhelm. Today, my guest is Heather Ponder, a neurofeedback practitioner based in Birmingham, Alabama, and the founder of Mindworks Neurofeedback. And her journey started 14 years ago when her young daughter was struggling with panic attacks. And after seeing the powerful impact of neurofeedback on her family, she made a complete career shift, and she's now helping others through neurofeedback for the past 8 years. She works inside a functional medicine clinic, teaming up with a local doctors to support clients on their health journey, and she's currently working on her wellness coach certification to take that even further. So I'm excited to welcome Heather Ponder to the show. Hello, Heather.
Hello, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Can you take us back to that moment when your daughter was having panic attacks? So what made you decide to try neurofeedback, and what changed after those first few sessions?
I was in a very different career, and we had done some relocating for my job, my husband's job, and moved around a little bit. My oldest daughter, on our last relocation, was struggling with all the new things, the new school, a lot of anxiety about a new bedroom, upstairs, all the things, just a lot of anxiety. And so I grew up in a kind of wellness-minded home, always tried to do the holistic thing before we go to medicine or regular mainstream doctors. So that was our first go-to. That's how we had been raising our children. And as it turns out, my dad is a counselor, and he had just learned about neurofeedback a few months prior to this from a colleague, and they were starting to use it with some of their patients that they had he was an EAP counselor at a hospital. So he gave me some information about it. My husband and I discussed it. We started trying to find a practitioner in our area, and we couldn't find anyone near us within a reasonable distance. So we actually packed up very quickly. Like the next week after learning about it and researching it, took her for a week, and we were doing 2 sessions a day to try to regulate her. We felt like she wasn't really eating. She wasn't really sleeping. She was in kind of a constant fight-flight state. Within 2 days, she was giggling, she was sleeping, our little girl was coming back to us, and it was so profound. We stayed for 5 days, we did 10 sessions, and it just made a huge impact on us. And I didn't really think I was going to make a career shift at that point. It took me a little bit of time to, I guess, have a couple other family emergencies. My youngest sister had a TBI just a few years later and was in the mainstream medical, couldn't get better for 4 to 6 months. She was an instructor at Purdue University. She couldn't teach. She was having a hard time parenting. She just wasn't able to do bright lights, sound. She had to wear earbuds all the time. So my dad and I kind of, coaxed her out of the mainstream and said, instead of all this medicine and all the things you're doing, let's go the holistic route. And we introduced Neurooptimal to her. She started doing neurofeedback, very quickly made a turnaround. So that was impactful for me. And then just a couple of years after that, our youngest daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I was like, gosh, let's research if neurofeedback can help for that. It's been impactful for all the other things. So that summer, we did 20 sessions after she was diagnosed between 3rd and 4th grade. And it was incredible. Her processing speed was better. Her reading fluency tests were better. She wasn't anxious about taking tests. You can't take dyslexia away, but it regulated her in a way that, again, was impactful. She was enjoying school again. She had confidence. She could read out loud. Just a lot of things that she had struggled with the year before. And so it was then, finally, the third time I said, every community needs this. Like just everywhere I turned, I felt like neurofeedback could help someone. So I decided to switch careers. I took about a year to research all the different neurosystems. I really wasn't convinced that, I only knew of one that we had been using. And although it was impactful, if I was going to make a change, I wanted to do what I believed in. So I researched everything. And I kept coming back to the system that I use or we saw work with our family because it was simple to use and you didn't have to have a specific degree or education, although I found out it was helpful to have more information. And I'll talk about that in a little while. I liked some of the other systems. They gave more reporting and brain maps and such. But I felt like there was going to be a lot of time spent on that instead of on the client. And maybe in the end, the simplistic piece, we were going to get the same results. So I ended up going with the system that I went with still all these years later. 8 years later, I have multiple systems. I had multiple locations and doing some rentals and such, but I believe in our system. I think the simplicity of it, it's powerful technology, but it's really about, I want to spend time with the client. So that's kind of got off track a little bit, but that's why I ended up going with the system. And finally, through lots of reading books, taking some different classes and educating myself, because I was in the professional world of photography. It was very different. So I felt a little underprepared to be a neurofeedback practitioner, even with the certifications that I had. So after a year long journey of figuring out the system and how this was going to look, and opened the business in 2017, and I quickly partnered with a functional medicine doctor. She and I crossed paths in our community. I had been looking, because of some of the clients I had, to refer to functional medicine, and she had been looking, because of some of the patients she had, to refer to neurofeedback. And she said, come to the office, let's talk, let's collaborate. And so we're still together and going well.
Okay, that's fantastic. So many of our listeners have heard the term neurofeedback, but aren't really sure what it means.
Yeah.
How do you explain it to someone who's never heard of it before?
That's a good question. I find one of the big drawbacks to neurofeedback is that people haven't heard of it. And then when you start talking about it, they seem a little worried or scared because you're putting electrodes on, let's say, their child's head or their head. And so, yeah, giving that basic spiel to people, I will typically say, it's very relaxing. You're going to have some sensors on your head and on your ears or on your scalp where it's, picking up your brain energy, reading it like an EKG picks up the electrical energy in your heart and gives feedback about that. This is the same thing, only with your brain. You don't feel anything, you just feel the sensors going on. You're just listening to very relaxing music. You're going to hear some interruptions in the music. That's signaling your brain to make some changes. You don't have to do anything except for keep your sensors on, keep your earbuds in, relax. We have comfortable lounge chair that you're sitting in a recliner with your feet up, a blanket if you want it, in a nice dark room. And so then the questions come in. They're going to start asking, how long is it? And how much does it cost? And how many sessions do you have to do? But that's kind of the opening when I get a phone call or run into someone that says, I heard what you do and I think it could help, but I don't know anything about it. Can you tell me?
Right. Well, I guess that's really why we put All About Neurofeedback together, because we recognize that people do not know about neurofeedback and they don't know the benefits and what it can do for them. We wanted to have one place where people could go and learn all about it, and that's what we've been doing, right? You're also trained as a wellness coach. What motivated you to add that to your practice, and how do you see those two, coaching and neurofeedback? How do you see that working together?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So, as I mentioned, I work with a functional medicine doctor, and she had me doing some nutritional counseling early on when we collaborated neurofeedback and her business, because she was overhearing me talk a lot about nutrition and how our gut health affects our brain health. And that's part of the education I did during that gap year that I took between changing businesses. I just wanted to dig deeper. And so I was looking for, the lifestyle medicine, functional medicine, just more information to be able to help my clients and help our patients on their journey. A lot of people, when they're in that phase of they don't feel well, whether they came out of, an injury or an illness, COVID or something, and they're just sluggish and they're brain fogged and they're standing there like, help me, I'll do anything. Neurofeedback's an amazing way to get them started, and they can relax and they start to feel the brain fog lift. But a lot of times there are some underlying issues, which is why they couldn't recover from. I'm just using that as an example. It could be any number of things, a concussion or anything like that, but we just need to start looking at the gut and what's going on with it. What can we do to repair? And that's what's great about being in the office together, is that, we can collaborate on blood work, on nutrition, on supplements, things like that. So bringing the wellness coaching in gave me even more education and just digging deeper into the knowledge that I already had, feeling like just having a way to talk to people that motivates them. Sometimes educating them is a little overwhelming. I needed to figure out that psychological piece of, say, nutrition, getting them to want to change, because they can get all the information, but getting people to change when they're in kind of a stuck place, in an unhealthy place, can be a challenge. So that was the reason behind it.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's definitely true, because while neurofeedback is sometimes almost a miracle tool, right? There's other things out there that can help tremendously, and I think that's great that you're doing that. So have you noticed any patterns or common aha moments clients have after a few sessions?
Yeah, I started off with a lot of kids. I'll start there. I love how kids communicate with you, because it's just so basic and so honest. And I got a lot of referrals because of people saying firsthand what my daughter went through, and seeing in 1 week she went from being in this state with the glazed over eyes to the happy, cheerful girl. So I got that same age range. And a lot of the clients the first few years were that age range. So getting the feedback from them was interesting. But I actually had a 3-year-old, and he said, I just feel so good. I just feel happy. That's when you say, how do you feel after the session? That's kind of when I walk back in. How do you feel? How are you doing? I want to check in. I've had a couple of, 7 to 9-year-olds say, I'm doing so much better in school. I'm not nervous anymore. I'm doing well on my tests. You see things like that start to shift after a few sessions with kids. I'm not angry as much. That's something that kids will tell me. I'm not as mad. I'm more happy. Adults are a little bit different. And sometimes you have to play detective with adults because they're not sure what they feel. But when you start saying, how's your sleep? How's your mood? That sort of thing. Then they're, oh yeah, well, you know what? My mood has been really good. Some of the things that shift early on, I think, are just the feeling of being overwhelmed and stressed, that people just are able to be more resilient and handle things and switch gears a little bit more quickly with less, I guess, just emotion with it. The stress is there. Emotional resilience, speaking of emotion, life happens. You may get angry or sad, but you don't stay there for days and days. I've heard that early on in sessions.
Okay, awesome. So without naming any names, can you share a story that really stuck with you, like where neurofeedback made a big difference in someone's life?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we spoke today, because it's so hard to narrow down to one story. But early on, my first year of my practice, I had a young mother come to me. She had 2 young boys, and she had a stroke. And her stroke was actually 4 years before she walked in my door. But she came in, she was dragging her right foot. Her right arm didn't move real well, and she was right-handed. So like when she would go to get the pen, she moved slowly. Her face was still drooped a little bit. Her speech was very slow. It took a lot of patience to communicate with her, because she would get flustered and she wouldn't be able to get her words out. She was very fearful and anxious because of what had happened to her. And we worked together for the better part of a year. She would come in weekly for sessions. She was a little apprehensive to do anything any quicker than that. We could have done sessions at a quicker pace, but it was really neat to see. Just slowly, her body started doing what it was meant to do. Her face wasn't drooping. She stopped dragging her foot. She stopped struggling to write and use her right hand. Today, this is, again, probably 8 years later, if I run into her out and about, I'll see her every once in a while. I can't tell she's had a stroke. She's speaking fluently. She doesn't have the hesitation. She doesn't have the blocking on words. Her confidence is back. And to me, that, like you said earlier, that was a miracle. All those years later, it didn't just happen. It was like a little bit over 4.5 years after she had the stroke, I saw her in the office. So her sister lives out of state and she came to visit her and she hadn't seen her in a while. She talked to her, so she knew her voice and everything was different. But her sister was amazed at the before and after of how she looked too. So
That is
yeah,
awesome. It's quite the
yeah,
story. I hear those kinds of stories a lot because I work with so many, neurofeedback providers, but it always makes me smile when I hear those
it is
things.
amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's been great. Do you have anything else that you want to share?
I would just say to those thinking about doing neurofeedback or early in their practice, network with people that are in of other doctors' offices, chiropractors. I have pelvic PT, physical therapy. I have a neurologist at UAB, which I found amazing that he knew about neurofeedback because you don't always hear that in neurology. But network in your community, let people know what you do, because if you're in it to help people, that's the best way to get to other people. And it's not like probably the neurologist wasn't the best example, because it usually is somewhere in the chiropractic field, counseling field, functional medicine field that you're going to see people refer for neurofeedback. That's been an amazing way, along with word of mouth, to grow the business. And then we can refer back, once you get somebody, if they can't do counseling because they just are blocked and maybe in that post-traumatic stress place where they just can't even talk through what happened to them, doing some neurofeedback and then trying counseling again a lot of times is successful. And so it's a great network to have. You can refer back to them. Same thing with chiropractic. I refer to a chiropractor in the area quite often because we know a healthy central nervous system is going to help with everything. So yeah, I would just say network, and that's it.
Well, thank you very much for coming on,
Yeah.
Heather. I appreciate it. And for anybody that would like to speak with you, I would imagine they could give you a call. Like, how do you usually, bring on a client?
Yeah, I do. I mean, a lot of emails, a lot of calls. I love to talk to people. I think a lot of times email is a little bit difficult to reach people when they want to, so they can call or text. The local number here is 205-729-0810. I'm on social media as well. You can find Mindworks Neurofeedback on Facebook, on Instagram, and I'm inside of Live Well Functional Medicine. So if you're local, you can stop in. We have people stop in just to buy supplements and see what we do, because the outside looks a little bit different. And I've met people and helped them with neurofeedback from just walking in as well.
Okay, awesome, Heather. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about something I'm so passionate about.
Thanks for listening. Want to learn more about neurofeedback? Go to allaboutneurofeedback.com, where you'll find a ton of free resources to learn from, or you can connect with a local practitioner today. If you are a neurofeedback practitioner looking to grow your business, click the link in the description to learn more about our special offers or to get showcased on this podcast. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.